Hello there, people. It is now 2024, and I have decided that my first video of the year will be trying to predict what the next Mainline FNaF game is going to be, as I think it is a very interesting topic to discuss. With the recent release of Help Wanted 2, we have more foreshadowing than ever for what the next big FNaF game will most likely be about, and I have been thinking a lot about it. So let's get into it, shall we? The best place to start in terms of predicting the next FNaF game would be looking to Ruin. Not anything in the actual DLC itself, but rather in the files. In Ruin's files, there are unused maps for the game, and in one of these maps, we see some very interesting leftover developer text. The text reads, "Something cool that maybe foreshadows Carnival, pending J-Top's thoughts." What exactly is Carnival? Well, what else would be but an upcoming game? This would be interesting enough on its own, but Help Wanted 2 actually doubles down by having explicitly Carnival-themed levels, which I would consider definite foreshadowing. The most blatant Carnival theming in Help Wanted 2 has got to be Phaser Blast. It's literally one of those Carnival games where you're at a booth and you throw balls at things and stuff. In addition, in this level we have Carney, who is self-explanatory. I mean, just look at his name. There's also the Carousel level with Moon, and the Helpy Medical level, which you wouldn't think has any Carnival foreshadowing, but the voice in the level who is in place of the role that would usually be played by hand unit is called Carnival Nurse. It goes deeper than that, though. Let's go back to the Phaser Blast level. The environment which the level takes place in is pretty blatantly ripped straight from Curse of Dreadbear, and to make sure they're as unsubtle as possible, Dreadbear himself actually appears in the level as a cardboard cutout who's constantly there on the opposite side of the booth to Carney. This connects the Phaser Blast level to Curse of Dreadbear, which makes perfect sense. Curse of Dreadbear takes place in Fall Fest 83, so this confirms that Fall Fest is in fact a carnival. Maybe the reason the very obviously Pizzeria Simulator themed level, being the Helpy level, has a voice called Carnival Nurse is because Pizzeria Simulator location was near the Fall Fest of the year that Pizzeria Simulator took place. The Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogue show that there was a carnival next to the Pizzaplex construction site where the Pizzeria Simulator location was, so it makes sense. The Fall Fest thing also ends up linking back to the Carousel level, strengthening that connection, as in a later version of that level, Moon is replaced with Jacko Moon, who is obviously fall-themed. Jacko Moon also appears in the Foxy Log Ride level, and although that level isn't in Fall Fest, instead being the log ride from Ruin, it is based on the pirate ride in Curse of Dreadbear, which is in Fall Fest. The last intriguing thing from Help Wanted 2 is this poster you can get for the Fall Fest of 1970. The date 1970 is a little interesting, since this weird Fredbear cutout in Ruin is named in the files as 70s Freddy, obviously suggesting that's from the 70s. Not only does this poster tell us that Fall Fest dates back a very long time, possibly many decades, maybe even being where Fredbear's singing show originated, it also shows a circus tent front and center, suggesting that Fall Fest was a carnival that had a circus in it. This explains why there's been circus foreshadowing in addition to carnival foreshadowing. Carnivals and circuses are two separate things, but in this case this would be a circus being a part of a carnival. Oh yeah, there's been hints building up to something circus related too. First of all, there's Balloon World, which has a circus clearly visible in the background. Secondly, there's the Balloon Circus characters from the Funko merch line. We don't know what these are for yet, but I think they are for something. They could be used in the Fall Fest game that we've established is most likely being foreshadowed, or maybe they could appear in this mysterious project Click Team has been teasing, since they look like they could potentially fit alongside this Lolbit design. All pure speculation though. Another interesting thing to note is that the three costumes from Ruin that the Mimic wears a Frankenstein together amalgamation of are an elephant, a bird, and a lion, which are all animals associated with the circus. To back this up, it's also worth mentioning that the elephant costume has a very clearly circus-themed outfit. These extremely old suits may have been used at Fall Fest. This ends up linking the Mimic to the circus, which could in turn link him to Fall Fest. If you need more evidence that the Mimic is connected to Fall Fest though, listen to this part of the Mimic chase theme that sounds suspiciously like carnival music. So yeah, I think there is a legitimate link between the Mimic and Fall Fest, and this is where my big theory comes in. In Help Wanted 2, we see that both the Phaser Blast and Carousel levels catch on fire. It's specifically the two Carnival levels that catch on fire, which doesn't feel like a coincidence to me. I think this is telling us that a fire either did happen in Fall Fest, will happen in Fall Fest, or both. In the first Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogue, it is described that the Mimic appears as if it survived a fire, which we can see from the damage on him in Ruin. What if there was a fire in a past Fall Fest decades ago, and that's why the Mimic is burnt? We assumed he was burnt because he was in the Pizzeria Simulator fire, but that might not be the real reason. I think if this is really the case, then it makes a good bit of sense. But wait, there's more. The next part is gonna be a bit more speculative, but I do still think it is something worth considering. In the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, The Storyteller, we follow the perspective of the creator of the Mimic, Edwin Murray, decades after the Mimic's original origins. To make a long story short, the Mimic enters the Pizzaplex in the form of the Mimic 1 program being used to help create the Storyteller, an AI meant to be fed information from Fazbear Entertainment's stories and history to generate stories as well as generate experiences for AR, VR, and arcade games. Scarily topical. It also infects all the animatronics in the Pizzaplex to make them act all funky, much like in Security Breach, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. They have the Storyteller as a physical animatronic at the center of the Pizzaplex inside a giant baobab tree. They let the Storyteller decide what it looks like, and it decides to be a white tiger, in reference to the white tiger plush that Edwin's dead son David had, as well as a white tiger bed frame that surrounded his whole bed. More specifically, a giant white tiger head with 4 arms on its neck, as well as 1 blue eye and 1 green eye. This freaks Edwin out, causing him suspicion that the Storyteller is running off of Mimic 1, a fear that is later confirmed. Edwin suffocates but inside the tree, by the way. Anyway, what's interesting about this is that it's not just the Storyteller being a white tiger that freaks Edwin out, it's the Storyteller being a white tiger that looks this specific way. Here's a quote from the book. The 3 men had returned to their task, which was to carry into the hollow tree trunk a giant white tiger head. Not a real tiger head, obviously. If the thing the men were hefting was a real tiger head, Edwin wouldn't be as rattled as he was. Ha, he thought. Rattled was an understatement. He'd had a full-blown, nearly untethered from reality meltdown. No disembodied tiger head would have caused that. Unless it was like this tiger head. How interesting. You could say that was because it reminded him of the white tiger head around David's bed in the Mimic's origin story, but that explanation doesn't really work. All the story says about the white tiger head around David's bed was that it was an impressive-looking wooden white tiger head. No blue and green eyes, or lack of stripes. Nothing that connects it to the Storyteller, aside from the fact that it's a white tiger head. And it is established that the Storyteller simply being a white tiger head is not the reason it makes Edwin freak out. The story also, as after Edwin discovers the Storyteller running on Mimic 1, that it was happening again. What exactly was happening again? The Mimic never showed that Edwin had knowledge of how dangerous the Mimic was, so why is he scared of it now? It seems that at some unpoint known... It seems that at some unknown time in between the Mimic and the Storyteller, Edwin had some experience where he learned how dangerous the Mimic was, and at some point before the events of the Storyteller, the Mimic did take the form of a white tiger with blue and green eyes. It's very much possible that it was happening again, could be referring to various times Mimic 1 was used for things throughout the decades, but I have a feeling it's referring to an isolated incident. So, what gives? What's the deal with these mysterious gaps in the Mimic's history? Well, I believe in addition to showing how the Mimic got burnt, these questions might end up being answered in the Carnival game. My prediction is that everything is going to end up tying back to the Fall Fest. This upcoming game could also explain where Mimic learned the hide-and-seek thing he loves doing so much, with Tiger Rock, persona of the Mimic created by the Storyteller, saying he learned how to play hide-and-seek a long time ago, and it being suggested in the epilogues that the Mimic's tactic of hiding somewhere and getting the teenagers to go there so he can attack them is derived from him seeing something like a hide-and-seek game, plus Glitch Trap and Pizza Party doing something similar. Pure speculation, but I just wanted to throw it out there. I don't want to get my hopes up too much, but I do think this is all quite intriguing. I think either there will be a Fall Fest game taking place in the past and another one in the future, or one taking place in the future with a heavy amount of backstory in it. If what I have predicted turns out to be correct, then there is a chance that the game could even have us playing as Edwin. That would be nuts, and it would also be pretty freaking cool. But hey, that's just a theory. Big respect, MatPat, you're an MVP. Thanks for watching! Hopefully you enjoyed the video. This theory excites me very much, and whether the next big FNAF game will be a prequel or a sequel or whatever, I'm very excited to see what it has in store. That's all I have to say for now, so until next time, good night ladies and gentlemen and everything in between. Here's hoping for a great 2024.